Today are Zoe Grunwald, Westminster editor of The Lead and author and broadcaster, Emma Wolf. So welcome back to both of you. A number of the front pages have dealt with the continuing fallout from the data leak concerning people applying to come from Afghanistan, but lots of other stories around in the papers. So let's deal with some of those this hour. Zoe, kick us off with the Daily Telegraph, because the second story on their front page is about Donald Trump addressing this issue which has been dogging him about the so-called Epstein files, now asking for them to be released.
Obviously, Donald Trump is a president who has marinated himself in conspiracy theories over the years, and now his chickens are really coming home to roost, because he really led his supporters up the hill when it came to the Epstein files. And now, when he doesn't want them to be released, he's seeing a massive amount of pushback from the MAGA camp. He's now ordered the release of secret documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. These were these documents that were apparently on the Attorney General's desk and then seemed to disappear. And then he was calling for just the pertinent details to be released. But whether or not they are released, and whether or not a grand jury kind of agrees to this, the big question is whether this will even placate the MAGA group, because now there is such a sense that there is a deep state working against the interests of American voters, that this is a huge conspiratorial cover-up, and that somehow Trump is implicated, is going to continue to dog him. And of course, this all comes off the back of him now having a huge row with Rupert Murdoch and the Wall Street Journal about this publication of apparently a birthday letter Trump sent to Jeffrey Epstein in 2003.
Which is very quick to say that's a fake, and that's why he's suing them, which is something that perhaps his own supporters might applaud.
Yes, but may well do. But also, they care very, very much about this issue. They care very much about Epstein. So Trump really seems to be in a downward spiral now, where he is isolating a lot of his supporters, isolating a lot of the MAGA camp, and he's calling for some things to happen to hopefully placate people. But whether it will or not is a different question.
Well, exactly. We don't exactly know what these so-called files might involve. I mean, it may not be just like a clean-cut list, will it?
There's a lot of people who are extremely nervous, aren't they? Because they have, over the years, been either photographed or partied with or linked in some way to Jeffrey Epstein, and it's so much is still to come out, and it's tricky for Donald Trump, particularly because he was a big 1980s, 1990s. They were pictured many times together socialising. And yet, how far does that go? So, yeah, lots of questions.
Absolutely.
I think people getting sweaty under the collar about
absolutely.
But he's on his way. He's on his way to us.
He is, which takes us on to The Times, which focuses on his visit to the UK. He's actually got 2 visits to the UK.
Yeah, so he's got his state visit that he'll be hosted by the King in September. But on Friday, he starts a 4-day trip to Scotland. He's going to be opening a new 18-hole golf course named after his mother at his resort outside Aberdeen. And he'll also be visiting Turnberry, a club in Ayrshire. He's meeting the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, he's going to meet him in Aberdeen. But the protesters, there's a mixed bunch, but they're going to be out in force as well. So there's pro-Palestine protesters, climate change protesters, trade union protesters. They've all united, apparently, to form a Stop Trump coalition. They've got flags, they've got banners, they're expecting him to arrive by helicopter, of course, so they're not sure how they're going to, but they want maximum impact. They want the kind of, floating Trump baby kind of impact. I'm not sure he'll be bothered. He loves a bit of publicity, so that'll be fine for him. But yeah, he'll be in Scotland for 4 days.
And to be very interesting to see to what extent he's steered around those protests, and to what extent he's protected from them. Take us on to the front of the Eye, Zoe. They are focusing on some of the pressures on the Chancellor and who she might protect and who not in her upcoming budget.
Yeah, so obviously this is lots of speculation about tax rises. It's almost pretty much a given in Westminster and beyond that taxes will have to rise in some form in autumn to deal with this constantly evolving state of public finances and the headroom that continuously seems to be wiped out by factors sometimes beyond Rachel Reeves's control. One of the things here that the Eye is focusing in on is the impact of fuel duty. This is something that has been politically quite protected. Motorists in this country are seen as a pretty large voting bloc that you don't want to mess with. But fuel duties are a major revenue raiser for the government. So even a small change to this policy could have a massive impact. It wouldn't be without political consequences. The Sun, particularly the Sun newspaper, has launched a massive campaign over the last few years to keep fuel fuel duty frozen. But there has to be money from somewhere. So whether it is, the government continues to rule out changes to income tax, VAT and national insurance as set out in their manifesto. But if not that, then what is the question? Because money has to be found from somewhere.
Well, exactly, and lots of speculation over whether or not thresholds might be frozen on income tax instead, and whether or not that breaches a pledge or not will be much discussed if it was to happen. Let's move on again, though, shall we? This is an announcement that was made earlier this week about the government pushing forward with their commitment to give votes to 16 and 17-year-olds. What's the Mail's take on this?
Well, the Mail is talking about Wes Streeting specifically being at risk on this one. But I just think the 16, 17-year-old one is really interesting, and it's sort of it was pre-planned. It was it was known that Labour were very keen on this, but it seemed to come out of a clear blue sky in a way. It was sort of conveniently announced just when the Afghan cover-up had been all over the front pages. So, I mean, this is not going to get parliamentary scrutiny until September. So it has been seen as a little bit odd that the 16, 17-year-old thing just suddenly came up on Thursday. But anyway, who will it benefit? Labour were accused of sort of, trying to rig the political system because the younger people will vote for Labour. But it's really interesting when you look, actually, maybe the Greens will benefit quite a lot because younger people tend to be socially liberal. Reform could actually benefit, weirdly, because Nigel Farage is very popular on TikTok in a way that Starmer is not. And also, do 16-year-olds really want to vote? I mean, you get some political prodigies, but lots of them, 16, 17-year-olds, not that interested in
No, that's true. According
voting.
to polls, a fair number of them don't want to. We're out of time again, but we'll see you next hour. Thanks,
Thank
both.
you.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland